It's Monday, May 25th, 2026, the eve of the centennial of Miles Davis. And you know we got a banger for you. This is part 2 of 3 parts of this program on Miles Davis, specifically on the so-called Lost Quintet, the year 1969. The creation of the album Bitches Brew is shadow of this. And we've got fantastic insights into this moment in this band. Michael Veal, who wrote the book on the topic, quite literally. And you'll hear us talk about that. You'll definitely want to get a copy of that if you're digging this show. All right, let's get into it. If you didn't hear part 1, I'd go back and check that first. But otherwise, let's light it up. It's Deep Focus. The show's called Deep Focus. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman. Let's go back to Antibes, summer of 1969 on WKCR. Excuse me, Miles, I hate to interrupt, and we will come right back to hear the rest of that exposition that's coming. But I just want to let you know you are listening. That's music from Miles Davis, a live recording you've probably never heard. I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. It's just to let you know you're listening to WKCR, FM New York, WKCR HD, 89.9 FM here in New York City, WKCR.org, anywhere. If you've got an internet connection or friends that do, you should let them know. Or you could listen to this show on the Deep Focus podcast. The show is called Deep Focus, and this program, a couple of weeks, will go up and join over 450 hours of programming, nearly as great as this. I'm having a great time with you. My guest, Michael Veal, and Michael literally wrote the book on this music. He wrote the book Living Space, and it addresses, among other things, this 1969 so-called Lost Quintet of Miles Davis. And we're listening to this live recording at the Antibes Festival, summer 1969. And man, so many things occur to me listening to that music. That oh-so-brief statement from Miles, his tone, his expression is just the state of his playing is such a high level, and it just, there's a clarity about it that I don't think people associate that with so-called electric Miles.
Well, and there's a reason for that. I mentioned Betty Davis earlier. Betty Davis was friends with all these musicians, Hendrix, Sly, and everyone. And a lot of them were really associated with the drug culture at the time. But Betty Davis was not into that, and she was a very healthy living person. So when she married Miles, she got him to give up a lot of his bad habits, and to eat mainly a vegetarian diet, sometimes fish, cut out the drugs, cut out the alcohol, cut out the cigarettes, exercise, I think they might have taken some yoga classes together. And as a result, Miles was playing the best trumpet of his career during his time with this band, because this band was exactly concurrent with his relationship with Betty. In fact, his relationship with Betty fell apart around the same time that the band started to change again. So you're really hearing Miles Davis, the trumpeter, at the peak of his powers, his technical ability, the peak of his clarity of expression, and yeah, that's what you're hearing.
It's coming through, absolutely. And
see, later in the 70s, the lifestyle stuff kicked back in to the point that that mid 70s band was incredible with Pete Cozy and Michael Henderson. But really, Miles' playing kind of declined during that whole period, and by the end, right before he went into his retirement, I think in 1975, he wasn't really playing well on the trumpet at all. Now, the band was incredible, and he also had a succession of brilliant saxophonists in that band. Dave Liebman, Sonny Fortune, Carlos Garnett, I think, was there.
Gary Bartz.
Gary Bartz was earlier. Sam Morrison.
Steve Grossman.
Steve Grossman was also earlier. That was like 70, 71. But I'm talking about 73, 74, 75. So he wasn't really, the band was amazing, but he wasn't really playing the trumpet at that point much, and it, didn't sound very good. Plus, he's playing his trumpet through a wah-wah pedal in that band, so it wasn't about the same clarity of tone. Because he's probably trying to sound like Hendrix on Voodoo Child or something like that. But in this period, 1968, 69, he was at the peak of his abilities as a trumpeter.
Yeah, I'm hearing it. And another thing we're hearing there, maybe you could talk a little bit about these so-called compositions that he's playing. I say so-called because he's not necessarily playing, to the bar and expressing the whole written, melody, but he is using them in some very powerful and interesting ways.
Well, he's using them as springboards into the zone of freedom. Because, the second quintet had this concept they used to play with called time, no changes. In other words, they keep playing time, ting, 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 whatever, but they would abandon the chord changes. So when they did that, they abandoned, a lot of those jazz tunes are built on cyclical song forms. Hence, the chorus, the idea of the chorus, like, okay, you play two choruses. In other words, you're playing through two cycles of the chord changes. So when they brought in this time, no changes thing, it meant we're going to keep the rhythm going propulsively, but abandon the changes. Well, if you abandon the changes, you basically abandon the form. Now, by the time it morphed into the Lost Quintet, they abandoned the time. They didn't just abandon the changes, they abandoned the time also. It was no longer, I said this earlier, it was no longer straight, steady rhythm. So those two...
listening to what Jack DeJohnette is doing in here, at times,
right,
he's going a whole other way.
Yeah, because he's listening to Rashid Ali and Sonny Murray and all those free drummers of that time period, as well as, Keith Moon, Mitch Mitchell, and Ginger Baker, as well as Elvin Jones and Tony, obviously. So I think that they do play the heads, more or less. They're kind of gesturing towards those tunes, but taking it into totally different territory. And really, the tunes, like the heads, are just there to frame what is basically free improvisation.
But it seems like Miles is replacing some of that structure with some of his own kind of tension and release. There's like a real feel of holding back, and then the flood opens, and you hear the audience react in this particular show in south of France.
Yeah, well, Miles wasn't really a free guy, And in the early days of this band, there's a story of him standing next to someone, I can't remember, an older musician, and asking him, man, where are they? I don't know, where are they? Well, like, he couldn't understand where they were in the song form. And the guy said, well, Miles, it's your band. You don't know where they are? But the point is, they weren't anywhere, vis-a-vis the songs, because they had gone out into freedom. But I mentioned that just as context for the fact that when you hear these tunes, they start out with them playing the song, and they're swinging, and Miles is playing over, changes and straight rhythm. And then when Wayne comes in, he kind of takes the baton from Miles, and he's kind of swinging and playing over straight rhythm for a while and over changes, but then they gradually move out. And by the end of Wayne's solo, they're totally into the zone of freedom. And then he passes the baton to Chick Corea, who's totally in the zone of freedom and articulating it beautifully with his percussive touch. And then they kind of pull it all back together into time for Miles to come in at the end. And then they go on to the next tune. So that tension and release that you're hearing is a feature of every song here. And that was like the operating procedure of that band. Start out tight under Miles, take it gradually out, way out into space, and then bring it back for Miles' reentry.
And you said something really interesting off mic, and it's a great story. I think I got to ask you to repeat it, that I made a comment on exactly what you're referring to, and there was a period there in that last piece where Chick Corea's soloing, and I said, this sounds almost like what Cecil Taylor was doing at that same time. He had a tour with Sam Rivers, and there's kind of a parallel, Sam Rivers and Wayne Shorter, and I didn't make a connection till you said something about that.
Yeah, well, not on this particular gig, because this is in July of '69. But when the band came back when Miles Quintet came back to Europe to do a tour in the fall of '69 as part of the Newport Jazz Festival in Europe tour, Cecil Taylor was part of that tour. And at that time, Cecil had Sam Rivers in the band, and I think Jimmy Lyons and Andrew Cyrille. And so Miles' guys were they were hearing that music every night. Of course, Sam Rivers had an early incarnation as playing with Miles right before Wayne Shorter joined. And, Sam Rivers, he deserves a whole broadcast unto himself. You could easily do a week-long show dedicated to the incredible productivity of Sam Rivers. But the point is, Sam Rivers was a guy who could inhabit all the spheres of the music. He could play all the straight-ahead stuff, and at the same time, he was totally committed to and very articulate in the so-called free stuff. And so, I interviewed Jack DeJohnette for this book, and he told me that they were listening to what Cecil had, to Cecil's group every night and learning from it. And so you could hear it. Now, on this particular recording from July, that happens to be at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, when Cecil recorded his one of his classic live albums, also in the south of France, at the what's it called, the Fondation
Mag, yeah,
however you pronounce that word.
I think they say Mag.
Okay, with that band, with Sam Rivers and Jimmy Lyons and Andrew Cyrille, and I think Alan Silva. So they're kind of plying the same territory. In fact, I interviewed another person for this book, a French photographer named Guy Kopelowicz, and he told me that, because he was living in Paris, he told me that he came down to the south, to the Mediterranean, where Antibes is, to catch the Miles set, and then they got in a car and drove to, I think, St. Paul de Vence.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, that's James right where
Baldwin lived.
Yeah.
To catch the Cecil concert. So all this stuff was really in the air at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's and Galerie Mag, that's all in that same area. And there's a whole circuit of festivals along that way too.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. Well, we are deep in it. The show's called Deep Focus. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman. I have the great pleasure of being here with Michael Veal, who, among other fantastic books that you're going to want to explore, wrote Living Space, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, and free jazz from analog to digital that, among other things in detail, addresses the band. We are listening to Miles Davis of this 1969 period with this so-called Lost Quintet. It's getting less and less lost with every passing moment for me.
Well, in all fairness, the Lost appellation is kind of played out because about 10 years ago, Sony started released a thing called the Miles Davis Live Bootleg Series. Volume 1 was the second quintet, and that's an amazing box set of live recordings. They're actually coming off the Bob Dylan bootleg series.
Right.
That's like the template. And then the second volume was the Lost Quintet. So technically speaking, the Lost Quintet is no longer lost.
Yes.
But the image is so poetic that we stick with it. We keep using it.
Yeah. And but we're shining some light. I think it's coming to light. And this is all in anticipation of, if you're listening live on the radio on May 25th, 2026, tomorrow is Miles Davis Centennial. There's a little something special in the air, I think. And here at WKCR, we are going to be celebrating round the clock for 3 full days. So you're going to want to keep it locked. 89.9 FM or WKCR.org. And we've got a bit more of this set from Juan Lepin and Antibes, summer of July of 1969. And if we haven't said it in a bit, I will once again give you the personnel. Miles Davis, trumpet, Wayne Shorter, tenor and soprano saxophones. We did finally hear a soprano on that last bit of the set.
Footprints.
And we've got Chick Corea piano, Dave Holland on the bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums. And those 3 names became as indelible as, everybody loves to say Herbie, Ron, Tony. It's almost like one word. That rhythm section became such a unit. And I'm getting that same feeling about Chick, Dave, Jack.
Absolutely. That was an incredible rhythm section. And that's what made the band, This very idea that you could expand and contract the time and you could move from time to free time and do it so fluidly. And it's like they were glued together. They moved as a unit. It was almost like you're looking at a school of fish, how they go through the sea, like expanding. The school expands and contracts as they move, in relation to the waves. That's the way this band dealt with rhythm.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to let you hear some more of that and a little less of us for the next little bit. And what is rounding out the rest of this set?
I think we ended at the interlude between round about midnight and the next tune, which is It's About That Time, which was a song that Miles had recorded on the recently released In a Silent Way album.
There it is. Okay, live music from Miles Davis, 1969, and Deep Focus on WKCR. Oh, man. That is obviously a live recording. Miles Davis, summer 1969, at Antibes. And they call it the Lost Quintet that we've been talking about. The show's called Deep Focus. I'm your host, Mitch Goldman, and I'm here in the studio with Michael Veal, who is... Michael, you just are so filled with love and understanding of this group. It's such a joy to have you as a guest here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Wow. That was it was very decent recording and a really interesting performance. And I always have to laugh when, especially, and you still hear this in some of the later sets we were talking about so this is 1969, the beginning of Electric Miles, and it kind of gets way out there in ensuing years. Maybe we'll get to talk about that on another date.
It's even way out there now.
It's already getting there. And then, that last little bow, that little flourish of playing the theme.
Yeah.
And that goes back to...
That goes back to the great days of the first quintet.
Yeah. And was it Monk wrote that, I think? Or?
I think so. They played it on that famous Newport recording from, was it 57?
Yeah. And
yeah.
It just sounds so out of place.
I think Miles was a contrarian.
Yeah.
He knew that people were coming to hear those so-called greatest hits, but he didn't want to play that music anymore. So he ended the set with that kind of perverse gesture to his jazz past, So he's saying, "Oh, you want to hear some jazz? Okay, here it is."
Send them on their way. A little breath mint. A little breath mint. But did he have a sense of humor?
Well, I never met the man, so I couldn't tell you, but you can hear it in his music.
Yeah.
A very perverse sense of humor.
It's not easy to tell an instrumental joke. It's not a lightweight assignment, but he kind of does achieve that at times.
He does. I guess the other thing I would say about this Antibes performance is that in recent years, clips of it have come up on YouTube, like video footage. Not the whole, I've never seen the whole gig. But, wait, have I seen the whole gig? Let's see. Actually, the whole gig is somewhere. I have it on DVD that I bought at the old bootleg store, Bleecker Bob's.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. I used to go there for jazz bootlegs, right before they closed.
It was a little bit of slim pickings, but there were some gems in there sometimes.
There were some gems in there. And so, Miles and the rest of the band changed their whole dressing style in this time period. Miles was wearing, these Moroccan tops and scarves and, leopard skin pants and things like that. He was basically taking his cue from Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
Because Miles and Hendrix were shopping at the same boutique in the village, the boutique run by this woman, Colette Mimran, who I mentioned a few minutes ago.
Yeah, off mic, yeah.
Yeah. And Wayne's wearing just like first of all, he's got a beard and a mustache, which is very unusual for Wayne. Or maybe it's just a beard without the mustache, which is a little strange. But he's got a vest on with shirtless, just a vest and a chest. And Chick Corea, they're all wearing kind of hippie fashions at times. 6 months earlier, they were wearing suits and ties.
Right, yeah.
So everything was changing really quickly. And I actually think Miles made some of his most elegant fashion statements in this time period. Now, later in the 70s, it got a little garish. When he had Corky McCoy doing the album covers like On the Corner and Big Fun. But during this time, when the music was in balance between the old jazz and the new free stuff and the electric stuff, I think in a way it was paralleled by the way he was dressing, because there's some really slick, I'm not really a fashion guy, but some really slick, clean, fashion shots of Miles from these gigs in France, from the Newport Festival where he's wearing the denim ensemble. You've seen those photos, right?
Yeah.
And the big wraparound glasses.
Right, yeah.
And from the Paris gig in, I think, November of 1969, when the band came back to Europe, where he's wearing a beautiful Moroccan top. So it's just interesting that the sartorial sense is evolving along with the music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we talked a bit earlier. So we listened to that whole set, and it was a pretty substantial set. I mean, there's times when, especially playing festivals, they're not doing what I would consider full-length set, but clearly they're feeling it and stretching out.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned earlier an album that they went in the studio to do, Bitches Brew.
Right.
And that includes these musicians, but also some other things as well.
Yeah. Well, this group is like the nucleus of Bitches Brew. The difference is the tunes that they're playing. I mean, they played one of the tunes that we heard on this album, Miles Runs the Voodoo Down, which is like his challenge to Hendrix. Because obviously Hendrix, with Voodoo Child and Voodoo Child's Slight Return and all that, that's a big part of his symbology. The roots of the blues, the spiritual roots of the blues and voodoo and hoodoo and all of that. So that's like Miles's coded challenge or taunt to Hendrix.
And he lets it fly. His solo on that.
He does. And we're going to hear an even better solo on that when we listen to this next gig on that same tune. But all that was going on at that time. I'm sorry, I lost my... Bitches Brew. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the group at the heart of Bitches Brew. And they added some players. John McLaughlin is there on guitar. Benny Maupin is there on bass clarinet. Don Elias is there on percussion and drum set. Herbie, I think Herbie's there. Chick, and Joe Zawinul. And then they're playing several tunes by Joe Zawinul on Bitches Brew. So the Lost Quintet is very important as the group that kind of workshopped a lot of that music that they eventually refined on Bitches Brew. And so that's another significance of the band. They were playing that music out on the road before anyone had ever heard it, really,
Yeah, it wouldn't come out until the following spring.
And some of that stuff like Directions wouldn't come out until much later.
Right.
So, yeah.
But he takes the band back to Europe in the fall.
That's right. Well, Bitches Brew is recorded on August, I think, 18th and 19th, 1969, same weekend as Woodstock, recorded at CBS Studios in New York, and they continued to gig. And then late October into early November, they take the band back to Europe as part of that Newport Jazz in Europe tour, which I think Duke Ellington was headlining, the Duke Ellington Orchestra, and Cecil Taylor Unit, which was a quartet at that time, Miles, and someone else that I don't remember. So, yeah.
What a bill.
What a bill, yeah.
Well, we do have some of recordings from that fall, and you've made a selection. So, do you want to? Should we start? Why don't we start? I think we should start with the beginning of the second set, which is, I think that's Bitches Brew, right? Am I correct about that?
I think this set starts with Directions.
The second set. Should we do the second set? We could start with the first set.
Okay, well, the list here doesn't...
It doesn't indicate.
It doesn't indicate where
the second set starts. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's after Mascalero. Yeah.
With applause. So that must be the ending applause. Okay. You're right. I think they do start with Bitches Brew.
I think so. Well, you're listening to WKCR FM New York, and maybe you're in WKCR HD, good way to listen. You can hear us all over the world live at WKCR.org, and you can also find us at 89.9 FM here in New York. And this program, Deep Focus, every time after the show, we put it up over the next couple of weeks on the podcast. It's called Deep Focus. It's on that phone in your pocket, and it's just like listening to the radio. It's free. There's no ads or sponsors, or don't ask anything from you. We won't try to sell you any sports gambling pitches or anything like that, or no pills or anything we're trying to sell.
Miles Davis refrigerator magnets.
Maybe that's not a bad idea, but no, not yet.
Chick Corea socks.
That could be a good item. I like that. No, it's just wide open. We're giving it away. 450 hours up there, including some really great shows we've done specifically about Miles Davis, but all kinds of other favorite topics. Go in there and find your way around, and let us know you stopped by if you like. But this show tonight, so it's May 25th, 2026. Tomorrow, May 26th, is the centennial of the birth of Miles Davis, and we are marking that moment with 3 straight days of nothing but Miles. So keep it locked right here. And right now we are in this, going to the 3rd hour of this deep focus on Miles with Michael Veal. That is part 2 of this deep focus from January 25th, 2026. Michael Veal on the topic of Miles Davis, specifically the year 1969, a pivotal year for Miles Davis. How many guests of Deep Focus can you name who have published a book? Well, in addition to Michael, Melvin Gibbs was a recent guest. His book, How Black Music Took Over the World, that one's out and about right now. Henry Threadgill, he was on about 2 years ago. His autobiography, Easily Slip Into Another World, that's 3. I bet there's probably got to be at least one more. I don't know. What do you think? How many episodes of Deep Focus have you heard? If the answer to that is less than 450, you can go to mitchgoldman.podbean.com or your favorite podcasting app and find tons of other episodes of this show that we've done. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope I hear from you. If you do, you can email me, deepfocusnow@gmail.com. deepfocusnow@gmail.com. That will come straight to me. Tell me about your experience with the show. When do you listen? How do you listen? What's the greatest live set you've ever caught? I would love to hear it. All right. I'm going to see you over at part 3. Once again, it's May 25th, 2026. Michael Veal, V-E-A-L, Michael Veal, on the topic of Miles Davis, 1969. Okay, see you at part 3.